And we are live again. Hello, everyone. I'm John from MENTalk Links. MENTalk Links, there's the hoodie. I'm here today with another guest. MENTalk Links live again on your Tuesday lunchtime this time. We've had a couple of Mondays. And we're trying to do them weekly, but they're not always going to be weekly. So don't worry if you miss them. They'll always be available to catch up with on all the different social media channels, including Instagram, which we can't go live on, but we will be posting this afterwards. So yeah, I hope everybody's okay. I hope everybody is having a fun Tuesday in this horrible weather in Lincoln. If you're tuning in from Lincoln, if you're not from Lincoln, hope your weather's better. My guest today is, as the theme sort of goes, it's one of our normal kind of local champions of mental health, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that as we go through it. But hello to the people coming in. Geez, comments already. Hi, Sophie. Hi, Zion. Yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy the chat today. I'll bring our guest in, though, before you get bored of me rambling. So let me bring him in now. Hello, Stu.
Hello. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. How are you?
All right. Mental health champion. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
It's one of few nice things that I say to you. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I think you're a champion to me if you're doing it for the right reasons and you're doing the right things, and you definitely do. So, yeah, without further ado, mate, tell us a bit more about yourself. Tell everybody watching and tell everybody who's going to watch back on this who you are, and I guess kind of your involvement in mental health and kind of your story, if you like, whatever you want to tell us.
Yeah. So just before we go into this, John was taking the mickey out of me because he says every time I talk about anything, I always mention the tequila business. But you just asked me what I do, so I can't really.
You've got kind of got it, haven't you?
Yeah. So I'm Stuart. I live in Saxby. I am one of the brand owners of Tequila Datos, Saxby's #1 premium tequila brand. I am one of the non-exec directors for MENTalk Links, so I work alongside John, who is doing incredible work. And although he likes to put praise on us, we know that you are the true mental health champion. So thank you so much. I got involved with John when he put a message on LinkedIn, well, over a year ago now. And I just basically stalked him for a few months, and then he finally gave in and said, you can be a non-exec director. But yeah, I've been on my mental health journey. Had a breakdown about 3.5 years ago, and I'm very passionate about the work that you're doing, John, with MENTalk Links and what we're doing. And really keen to signpost services for people that are struggling, start talking about with people who are struggling with their mental health, and start destroying the stigma, as we say. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell, John.
That is a bit of a nutshell, yeah. No, Stu's done himself a little bit of a disservice. Obviously, as a non-exec director, he gets involved whenever he can and do as much as possible. But from the start, I think, the reason why I brought Stu in, the reason why I was really happy to work with Stu and talk to Stu a bit more about what I want to do was because he had lots of ideas, and because we had very similar sort of perceptions of it all, similar experiences in mental health, I guess, not necessarily always the same things, but it's one of my favourite phrases. But mental health generally, I think across all people, we all know pain, but we don't know each other's pain. What we can relate to is the sort of little bits about each thing. So it can be, your breakdown, your parts of your breakdown and the way that you came out of it, for example, your kind of rehabilitation after your breakdown. I can definitely relate to parts of that, but from a personal perspective, I don't really think I've had a proper breakdown. I probably had loads of mini ones. I used to talk about mini breakdowns a lot when I started my journey, and I probably know them as something different now, but I don't think I've had a real proper change in my kind of like, so it's one of those things where it's not all exactly the same, but it's always good to be able to relate. And and then just moving forward, obviously, since you've been involved again, you've been an invaluable asset. But I think the big thing that you've done yourself a disservice on is, outside of being a tequila brand owner and outside of just working with me, you do promote and you do kind of help as much as you possibly can. And I think that's the other thing I was really keen on having involved in me is in MENTalk Link and the work I do, is people who, alongside the day job, they want to help and they want to push agendas to help people. And with regards to what you do with Datos, is a case of, you often talk to hospitality services, you work with them because you're partners in bars and restaurants and stuff. And there's obviously a big mental health crisis across bars and restaurant staff. I mean, COVID's obviously exacerbated that. But you write blogs and things like that, and you talk about your experiences previously. And I just think that kind of activity is just always important, isn't it, to get across as many different avenues as possible. So yeah, that's my little comment to add to your intro.
Thank you, mate. It's a good point. I mean, it's the one thing that I feel like I'm a completely different person now. I look back on where I was before I had my breakdown, and I feel like I'm a different person in a positive way. I went to see my counsellor last Friday. I haven't seen her for 18 months.
Oh, wow.
Just because I wanted to really try to catch up with her, to be honest. And it was fantastic. It was like seeing an old friend because of COVID, and always wanted to sort of just drop in now and again and just and see her and just talk about where I am and what I'm doing and reinforce all the things I'm doing. But I look back on like my life in the last 3.5 years, and I just seem like a completely different person. And the blogs and the articles that I like to write help me so much, because I feel like if I feel like I'm sort of moving down the scale of mental health, probably the wrong phrase, but I feel like I'm dropping a bit, then those just sharing in any way possible really helps me. And it brings me back to where I was. And I really like doing that. It gives me a real sense of purpose and a real sense of sharing. It's like my defense mechanisms now are just stopping me from building anything up, and stopping me from building that wall that crumbled 3.5 years ago, and being in the same situation I was then.
I think that's a really good point to make, isn't it? I think when you put stuff onto paper, sometimes if you want to call it that, like, or you talk to someone, that's the same as putting something on paper, I guess. Really, it's getting it out, isn't it? It's like a brain dump a little bit. But like, I guess kind of that leads me on to a nice little question, actually, just to sort of get your own perspective on things. Like, is there much? What would you say are since you had your breakdown, or since you had started your journey in mental health, like, what are your personal kind of things that you have ended up doing or becoming part of your life that are different now, as far as like, I guess, kind of strategies, coping methods, things that you do that are acknowledgements and then movements forward, rather than just getting yourself slipping into those kind of areas of negative mental health?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The biggest thing that I took away from counselling, and the one thing that I wrote about a lot, is this idea that before I had my breakdown, I was on the outside. I had my mask. It was well formed. It was strong. No one knew what was going on, but inside it was a mess. And the analogy you're going to laugh at now, which I always use, is the peach analogy, which is that was a metal ball before, and now I'm a peach, and I'm softer on the outside and I'm more emotional on the outside, but inside I've got that stone, and it's the best feeling I've ever had in my life. It's amazing, and it's the contentment I've got. And you go through hard things in your life and emotional things in your life, but if you've got that contentment, then you can, so you do anything, but you can get through anything. I strongly believe that. And just to go back to your question, because I realise I've gone off topic there, is that how I cope is when I went through my counselling. The way I formed that stone was being challenged by my counsellor about this idea in my head that if something went wrong, I'd blame myself. Myself. You're not good enough, and that's from a number of things that have built up over the years. Difficult times at school, or not doing very well in my exams, doing a degree I never did anything with in the business world, which I don't regret, but I felt like I should because of how society made me feel. Getting stuck in a job that I hated, all these different things that built up made me, when something went wrong, I would blame myself. I would say to myself, "You're not good enough," and that is my biggest coping mechanism, because there are difficult times, and it's been a difficult time for so many people over the last couple of years, and last year I was no exception to that. But once you've got and there's a moment in my head that turns to myself and says, right, it's your fault, or start to blame yourself, and that's how everything builds up again. And the fight for me over the last 18 months has been ensuring that doesn't happen, ensuring that I'd not blame myself. So I used to get exhausted by blaming myself, and now the exhaustion comes from fighting, even starting that and saying, no, this isn't your fault. This is who you are. You are doing the right thing. These things happen, and you can still deal with that emotional. And that's the biggest coping mechanism I've got, is just reasoning with myself and ensuring that I'm not blaming myself, and making sure that I'm being rational about all the things that happen in everyone's life.
I think that's brilliant. I think that's a really good acknowledgement tool. Acknowledgement and analyzing things. That's what I always say to people. There's loads of different terminologies, but like emotional fizz and build up and all these different things you were talking about there, and then you get to a blame part. And then what I often talk to people about is the fact that blame can turn into a cycle of shame and then pain, and they all go together because they rhyme, so it's nice. But it can essentially go from blame to shame to pain, and then it becomes incredibly difficult to get back out of that sort of cycle. So I often work with people about, right, you need to reflect on those different stages and move back, and you need to get back to that point that you were talking about, where you then question the blame and you analyze it. And sometimes it's a case of acknowledging that the thought process of blaming yourself, like you said at the very start of that description, is actually just ingrained in you from other factors. It's not factual. It's not truthful. It's been a cultural problem. It's been something telling you somewhere in your past that you are to blame. I mean, I've been there, and it sounds so ridiculous saying it now, but I mean, I was just as bad as you, if not worse, in the past, where I would just relentlessly blame myself. I'd look at something that happened to me, something that somebody said to me, almost everything that happened to me, and almost everything that somebody said to me was my fault, was something I did to promote that happening. Which to try not to swear at lunchtime is horrendous. Like, it is absolutely horrendous. I was going to swear then because I get quite passionate about this, but no, it's kind of like, it's one of those things where we are kind of ingrained in our past and our culture that we're surrounded by. They kind of push us towards the easy option of, oh, it must be your fault. It just must be you. And I hate that. So that's really great. I kind of love the fact that you said that straight away as your main kind of, I guess, kind of your main acknowledging thing that you're doing regularly.
One of the strangest, just on that point, just before I forget, one of the strangest things that happened was what we were talking about on counselling on Friday when I went to see my counsellor, is that one of the very last things we talked about was, once I felt like I'd been through my journey and I'd sorted out some of the stuff in the past and I was sort of reasoning myself better, was I still, right at the end of my counselling journey, I still had this blaming myself, and my counsellor was telling me, like, you've got to focus on this, because this is gonna hurt you in the future. And she was telling me techniques like, look in the mirror and saying, you are good enough, and I was saying to myself, but I remember being in that counselling session saying, I don't want to do that. And I was absolutely adamant, I don't want to do that. And it's really strange to look back on that, because I have no idea why I wouldn't want to be in a situation where I didn't blame myself. But it was like my mind and my body saying, no, in order for you to be the best, you've got to blame yourself. You've got to work on those things. If you do something wrong, you need to blame yourself. And it's absolutely bizarre to think about that now. But I remember being in that counselling session 2 years ago and being adamant that's exactly what I was going to do. And it's crazy to think about that now.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there as well. I mean, I always talk about a pivotal moment in my counselling sessions when I went into a session and I was just ranting about everything that was happening in my life, my family, and all this kind of stuff. And I was kind of going off on one, and every single point that I was making, that I was talking about at that point, was, this is happening to me. All of the different anecdotes with, this person said this to me, this person did this, and I was like, blame, that person's at fault, blah, blah, blah. And the counsellor turned around to me and he said two things. The first thing he said was, this is a different you because you're blaming other people rather than yourself. So that's good in the start. But then the second one, he just went, why isn't John allowed to be happy? Why isn't John a good person?
Yeah.
And I just burst into tears, because I'd realised that what I was doing was taking everything that was an outside situation, an external focus, things that were happening to me, and I'd started to turn it into what was a reflection of me outwards. So it was like, I'm going to suck it all in and then push all this negativity out. And that's what my counselling's for. And actually, that was the complete opposite. What I should have been doing is taking it all in, reflecting on it, and deciding whether or not it affects me or not. I get a choice. And essentially, that was when my counsellor taught me that, you do have a choice. I can choose how I feel about this, and I can choose how I feel about myself. So that moment of your counsellor saying, just stand in the mirror and say you are good enough. I talk to people about mantras and things like that quite a bit, and you screw your face up, you kind of go, oh, that's a bit weird, it's a bit wishy-washy. But it's mad, really, how it's weird how the positive energy comes from stuff like that. I mean, I do a weird little inner monologue thing when I'm doing my teeth at night, when I'm brushing my teeth. It's just whatever works for you, isn't it? And I'm brushing my teeth and I'm talking about the day that's just gone by. And if it's been a particularly crappy day, I'll talk about, in my own mind, I'll talk about why it was crappy. Was it anything to do with me? Could I do something differently? But it's a very much positive conversation, because it's almost an offload in my own head, but it's also a productive offload. And if it was nothing I can really do about it. That's me going, right, okay, now I can go to bed. I've had a chat about it. It's almost like inner counselling, self-counselling. It's very
Yeah,
strange.
it is.
But a lot
But it
of people,
works.
yeah, and it does work. And a lot of people journal. A lot of people write stuff, and I think that's fantastic. For me, I've never really gotten into written journaling because I find my writing and creative energies are used all day, every day. So when I get to bed at night or whatever, I don't have the energy to do it. I just can't. And that's not because I hate myself or I blame myself and I should be better at journaling. It's like you just find what works for you, don't you? And I think that's brilliant. Got some comments though already. Hi, David. David Salkels here. Afternoon. Natalie, this is so relatable. Yeah, I mean, it's relatable. A lot of people go through it. I mean, Jesus, I argue that 99% of people blame themselves for something that's nothing to do with them and have done and will do continually until they sort themselves out.
Absolutely.
Your mum's here, Stu. Hi,
Hey, she messaged me yesterday and said 12:10 and said, I can't get onto this live. And I said, well, it's tomorrow.
There you go,
Mum,
Elaine. It's tomorrow. Yeah, you're here now. That's great. Nice to have you here. Marie, you've nailed the subject very well, both of you, and so very true. Thanks, Marie. Marie's a former guest, of course, on the MENTalk Links Live.
Of course.
Thank you, Marie, very much. Appreciated. And Natalie's just agreed that we're ace. So thank you, Natalie.
Exactly, yeah.
Next question I wanted to ask you. One thing I wanted to sort of reflect on with you, because I know personally, because I know you personally, but one thing I wanted you to talk about for the sake of anybody watching is kind of what you did next. So obviously you said you had a bit of a breakdown, and I think your story, you obviously didn't go into much detail about it, but kind of what happened and what you did next, I think is quite a nice thing that people might relate to be able to use as a tool a little bit to go, okay, yeah, he did this way, because you made some quite drastic changes, didn't you? So
yeah, absolutely. So just to give, I mean, I've no problem talking about the breakdown. So I had a breakdown in Prague on a stag do, which normally gets a laugh, with 12 guys that I'd never met before, 2 guys that I used to manage and one that I'd managed before that. So to say it was in a difficult situation would be an understatement, but you can't control these things. But it will go down as one of the best days of my life because it completely changed my life. And that steel mask, the ball, whatever, the wall that I'd built up over the years, had just completely crumbled, and it left a vacuum. But it was also a sense of relief. It was like, right, well, I've got nothing to protect now. Not that why I was protecting it anyway. This is regardless, but after that, I got on the phone to someone who I work with, who's still at Wave, Sam Wallace, who's absolutely fantastic. She's a massive advocate of mental health, and she's done incredible things. And we sort of worked out how we were going to combat this. The workplace I had a helpline to sort of talk to. They were appalling. And that's probably for another day, because I can't even begin to talk about how bad that was. Because one of the issues and one of the reasons why you've set up MENTalk, John, and why I'm so supportive of it is because at that time in my life I was in such. It was traumatic, but it was relief that I'd been in this situation. Right now, I've done the hard bit's done, and that wasn't the hard bit. Hard bit was getting help.
Yeah,
and I'd been the first experience of reaching out for help was appalling, and I'm already vulnerable, and I'm in this situation where I don't know what to do next. But luckily, I found a number for a Lincolnshire counsellors. It was an old number, and I rang it, and it turned out to be a different company. And then I got in touch with my counsellor Yvette, but it was. I don't know what I've done in that situation. I may have just gone back into the hole and just started building up that wall again. It was really difficult because counselling changed my life, but it wasn't the easiest way to get to. Had mental health issues before and went to a doctor, and I don't think I was as self-aware as I was whenever that was 10 years ago. And I got some CBD training, which was really useful. But there was still a feeling that I didn't know what the answer was, and this is why I was apprehensive this time. But yeah, I managed to get the counselling, but it wasn't easy. I went through the counselling journey, which was fantastic, changed my life. Reason why I'm a different person today. About a year and a half ago, I went through a number of things in my life. My dad was about to pass away, and a breakdown of a relationship, and moved on to antidepressants. There's a lot of debate, and we have a lot of discussions about antidepressants and how useful they are. For me, it was my I'd done my mental health journey, and I had that stone inside me at that point, but they just allowed me to cope. And the peach on the outside was getting a few too many hits. I was like a heavyweight boxer with a good chin. But there's only a certain amount of blows you can take, and you need support, and they did really help me. And I'm coming off those now, which I've talked to you about, which has been the right time for me. It was difficult. Even with I was actually going to mention today that I've actually got a message on my mobile today, for text message, to say we've booked you in for a follow-up appointment to see how you're coming off your medication, which I wasn't expecting, to be honest. I don't know if that's usual or not, but I was really happy with that, because it's like that aftercare of GPs. You go to your GP and say, I want to come off my antidepressants. And they say, yeah, okay, you can do it slowly, whatever. But actually, there's actually a follow-up there, and that was really positive for me. I'm really, really happy about that. So yeah, it was a mix of trying to get counselling once I could do that, and hopefully with MENTalk and what we're doing, we can allow people to get counselling easier, and antidepressants later on, which sort of helped me to cope through difficult times, which works for some people, doesn't for others, I think.
Yeah. So I think that I took away a lot from what you were saying there with regards to kind of like the different sort of stages, the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs. And I think, I mean, I talk about this as well a lot, but I think when you start a journey, or when you sort of open your mind to your own mental health, or you just simply acknowledge that you need a bit of support, the biggest thing that people need to understand, all people, is that just acknowledging it is not the end of it. It's a long process, sometimes quite a difficult process. There are ups and downs. And I mean, I remember 8 years ago when I first went to counselling, and the first breakthrough I had, I thought that was it. I thought I'm well now. That's it. It's all over. I'm brilliant. And then massive lows, massive drops, massive worse than before drops. And I was thinking, nope, this is, and then I dropped into the cycles. Nope, this is all me. I thought it was over, and it's clearly my fault that it's not. And clearly I'm like messed up in the head or whatever. And then there was just more highs, the more you learn about yourself, and then more lows. And actually what you get to is like you said the word there, what you get to is a point of contentment. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing. That contentment gets this bad rep that it's like medium, and it's not medium. Contentment is the goal, if you ask me, because
absolutely.
Humans and life, combine a human in the world that we live in right now with life in general and the different stages of life, you are going to get some punches, like you said with the heavyweight boxer. You are going to get some roller coaster moments. It isn't about going, oh, okay, life's a bit rubbish. It's about going, I am prepared to tackle the rubbish points, and I'm also prepared to really enjoy the good points, so that I'm just open to it all, and I'm better prepared and coping better. And really, that is where the journey comes in. And the journey is more, I think the journey gets forgotten about. And I think I've only really just started to reflect on my journey properly over the last couple of years, and be really grateful for all the different steps I've went through, because it isn't about an end goal. It's about that I guess kind of fluid, consistent contentment, like you said. So yeah, that was brilliant. Thank you, mate. And that was really candid as well. Talking about all the stuff you've been through. I'm sure a lot of people will relate to the kinds of things you were saying there. And I think that's crucial. Again, we all go through death. We all go through grief. We all go through losing jobs or being in toxic environments. It's just a fact. We will. We go through, I mean, you didn't lose your job, you left your job, sorry. But you know what I mean? And obviously, like, we have partners leave us, we have friends leave us, we have things that change, and change can be amazing, but it can also be the hardest thing to go through. So yeah, thank you for that, mate. Where are we looking here? Great insight, Gary Moss says.
Gary.
He said we should all be as good as talkers as Stu. Kudos to him.
Oh, bless him.
He's obviously been paid well to come on and comment.
He's a fellow Spurs fan. He's still living our victory on Sunday.
Let me just see if I can kick him out of here.
It's in Newcastle, so you should be happy about that.
Oh yeah, I'll let you off. I'll let you have that. Marie says, I'm really pleased you had that follow-up. This is great to hear. Yeah, I mean, some practices are changing, and I'm really happy to be part of and know of these great changes. I mean, for those who aren't aware, I've just become an LPFT governor, and I'm starting to see within the trust locally is that there are changes afoot, and they are listening to users a hell of a lot more, to make changes that are more positive. So stuff like that's really nice to hear and refreshing to hear. David says, true, but what and where is the door out of this? Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question, David. Everybody's door is different, and everybody's position of that door is different. I don't think there is a way out. I think it's more being comfortable in the environment you're in. I think it's a situation of the door that you have doesn't need to be as daunting to go out of. And I think you need to make that environment more secure generally. It's not about your house. It's not about a physical environment. It's about the space within your mind. You shouldn't want to leave the door, the proverbial door. You should want to be more comfortable in your space, and leaving the door is a comfortable thing because you're more strong and you are in a better position to do so. So it's a good question, David. And I know that we chat a lot. David comes to the speakeasies a lot, and he's a great guy, top guy. Massive ups and downs, David has, he won't mind me saying. And he has a lot of roller coaster moments that like the ones I've been talking about. But he is a top guy, and he does not give himself enough credit. He's a really great guy. Anyway, we're digressing. Another question, just a little question. I don't think we're going to hang on much longer. I think we'll try and keep it to one more big question, and then we'll let you go. But one thing I wanted to ask you is kind of what I know this as well. I know the answer to this, but it's for the sake of everyone else. When you are helping people, talking to people, I don't know, coming across people generally, how do you feel now that you've come this far in talking to people and trying to help them, and what do you kind of think, what goes through your mind when you are coming across people in work, or coming across through friends of friends or whatever, or when you're at the pub or whatever and you're talking to people? Like, because the reason I'm asking this, and the reason I'm wanting your answer, is my perception of it is quite a tricky one, because I obviously am a really passionate guy, and sometimes I can just go crazy and rant about stuff. You should be doing this, blah, 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 and I need to rein myself in sometimes, because I just really want to help people. So I guess really I'm looking at like another perspective of how you deal with that kind of thing. When it's your friends, when it's your family, when it's people you come across, what do you kind of say to them? What do you do?
I think the first thing is, like, I think you're the same, is you can pick up signs and invitations to talk once you've been through that journey. And I know through the assist training that we did as well, that has even got even greater, where I can really find invitations, and I can look back and think of invitations where people wanted to talk. But yeah, that is the hard bit, isn't it? It's the same, because you want to pass on, like, oh my God, I'm feeling really good now, but they don't want to hear that. It's like, you can do this and this. No, I'm feeling really good now. Because it's all about you, and it's not because I'm selfish or I want to just talk about me. It's because I know that there's a road here you can go on, and I know that there's you can get out of the forest. I know that there's a path away from this. But yeah, it's not. I think I've really found a way to ask the right questions of people and to get them talking. And I was talking to someone yesterday, someone in the village, who won't mind me saying. And we were just having a chat, and I just said to her, look, if I can feel the sort of tension and the pressure that you've got right now, and if I can release that in any way, or just help you a little bit, then I've done my job today. And that is really an important bit, because it's a massive spectrum. Because if you start talking about how well you're doing, then it can make them feel even worse. And it's not the intention of what we do, but it's just making sure that we're listening to them, actively listening, and giving any advice we can at that point, without bringing our own experiences and time where they're not necessarily needed. So it's a difficult one, but definitely feel like that has definitely helped. And I certainly think through the assist training we did was really important as well.
Yeah, it was amazing. For anybody who doesn't know what assist training is, it's suicide prevention training, and it is just insanely good. It blew my mind. That, alongside mental health first aid training, was amazing. But yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And the active listening part is huge. People need to be better listeners, and it's not. I'm not having a go at people when I say that. I think we are all naturally in our own minds. So we all naturally, even if we're the nicest people in the world, want to say, "Oh, well, I did this." And that's the best way to help people, when it's not. Sometimes the best way to help people is just to sit and listen, and just sit quietly, let them talk. And actually, you did a massive one there as well. You said a huge one that people forget, and that is, sometimes all a person wants you to do is to say, "What can I do to help you?" What can I do right now to make it better for you? Is it just sit here and listen? Something I heard the other day was, especially, and this works especially well if it's your partner or someone you live with or someone you see all the time, when they are in a mood, an anxious mood, a depressive mood, whatever you want to call it, and all you want to do is make it right for them. Stop for a moment and go, do you need solutions or comfort? Do you need solutions or comfort? Because we all want to give solutions. We all want to make it right, but they might not need it right then. They might just need a cuddle. They might just need to put on some TV or get some crisps out of the cupboard or whatever, right? And you might be able to provide that tiny bit of comfort that might be exponentially amazing for them. Or, like my wife does sometimes, and you won't, I mean, she won't mind me saying this, and you guys will probably relate to this. Part of that comfort can be, can you just leave the room for an hour? So I'll just go, yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, space and comfort could just be all they need. They don't need you to bombard them with solutions. However, there are occasions where if you say that sentence, do you need solutions or comfort? They may go, I'd actually like to hear a couple of solutions because I'm just stumped. I'm so confused. And that can just be such a deal-breaking, amazing situation to just go, solutions or comfort? What do you need from me? So I love that, mate. Thank you very much. Marie, sometimes the key is just to listen, especially at the beginning. Listen, and over time, offer advice when you think the person is ready to listen to advice. There you go, Marie. You've just confirmed what I've said. Perfect, succinct, well done. Yeah, and I just think that's a brilliant thing to end on, really. I think the way that people need to treat people is sometimes with a bit of silence, a bit of listening, a bit of just let them offload and give them space. I think a lot of people, and this is not from negativity. This doesn't come from negativity. It comes from positivity. It comes from care and love. But I think a lot of people don't realize that you are doing them a disservice by not creating that space and by talking to them. You actually could be doing it worse. So especially from a partner's point of view, a family point of view, sometimes just sit back, let them talk, offer them the space. I often talk about prefixing conversations, saying to them in advance of them talking, whatever you say now is not going to upset me, and I will try my best not to advise, not to push you. Whatever you say, I'm not going to take somewhere else. I'm not going to do something with it. I'm going to try my best not to worry about you. You can be as candid as you want. And that kind of prefix of a conversation can really be a leveler for some people, especially men. When they hear that, men can go, okay, all right. Because most of the time the men are thinking they can't talk because they think that this person's going to be upset or worry about the words they're going to say. Yeah. And it doesn't just work for men, but it's a big one. So
I like that, John. That's a great thing to leave on, isn't it?
Prefixing conversations, it's one of my favorite things. Yeah, just level it out and put them on the same page as you. Love it. Thank you for coming on though, Stu.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for talking so candidly. Stu's doing some great work. If you like tequila, he makes some. He's got some nice tequila, but he's also doing some great work helping out with MENTalk links and also doing some just fantastic writing and getting his message out there for other people who can relate to his story. So do check out kind of Stu's socials and stuff, I guess, and Tequila Panchadatos if you're keen on finding out about tequila.
Thanks,
but yeah, thank you for everybody for swinging by. We'll post this out and you'll be able to watch it back anyway. So have a good rest of your day.
Nice one.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, John.
See you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.